joining our NHL Network insider, Elliotte Friedman. And, Jim Rutherford actually raised some eyebrows earlier this week because he said the Canucks won't be offering an extension to Boudreau beyond the current contract. So how do you see this impacting Gabby's future in Vancouver?
Jamie, I think it's a great question in the sense that he has until June 1st to decide if he's going to accept his chance at the option for next year. It was kind of an interesting contract that Boudreau and the Canucks have. The Canucks could have said to Bruce Boudreau, you're not coming back next year, but they would have had to give him a payment. Now Bruce Boudreau has until June 1st to notify the team if he wants to come back next season. I do think there's some other teams that would have potentially some interest in talking to him. One team I wonder about is Philadelphia, where Chuck Fletcher was his general manager in Minnesota, but I think there might be others. But the other thing, too, is that I think just in general, I've also wondered if this was also just a little bit of a potential negotiating tactic, just because, there was so many rumors about what was going to happen there. I do think Rutherford wanted to put an end to that a little bit. The other thing, too, that's a mention about this is Kuzmenko is a Russian free agent who a number of teams are interested in. He had a video call with Vancouver today, and I understand that Boudreau was part of that call. So I think if he wasn't planning on going back to Vancouver, I don't think he would have been part of the call. So it says to me that there's still a good chance that he coaches the Canucks next season.
Yeah, I would think that it would be a good fit based just on what we saw from this half or two-thirds of a season alone. You mentioned that the search is on in Philadelphia for the new head coach because Chuck Fletcher announced earlier that Mike Yeo will not return behind the bench for the Flyers. So who do you think might be on the radar, maybe in addition to Gabby, as the next head coach in Philly?
Well, I think they've got their mindset on a few people that they're going to interview. I think one guy, because I think he's got a lot of Flyer connections, is Rick Tocchet. I find it very hard to believe that he won't be in the mix here somewhere. I can't imagine there's a team that Tocchet would like to coach more than Philadelphia, and I'm sure he's going to be in the mix. Another name, I think there's going to be a few. One thing I really believe about a lot of these searches, Jamie, is there's going to be a lot of names out there that we haven't uncovered yet. But I think Tocchet will definitely be in the mix. And one other name I've kind of heard out there that might be a little interesting for Philadelphia is Kirk Muller. Now, Muller this year went to the Calgary Flames. They had a phenomenal regular season. I've heard there's a couple of teams that have kind of looked about, okay, what went right in Calgary and what did Muller learn from that? He's been a head coach once before, and I have a feeling that he might be another guy potentially on Philadelphia's radar, but I believe it's going to be a long list. And I think more than Tocchet, more than Muller, I think there's going to be a few other, and Boudreau, I think there's going to be a few other people they're going to be interested in talking to, too.
So not just a long list of potential coaches, but also kind of a growing list of teams that are looking for coaches. Winnipeg, another team that's going to look for a new bench boss. What's the latest with the Jets?
Well, I think the Jets, they've said that Dave Lowry, the interim, will be able to interview if he wishes. But it sounds to me like they're going to go and look a long way out there to see. They've called it, a comprehensive search, an exhaustive search. I can't remember the exact phrase it was, but it's going to be a big search. And, I do look for people who have ties into Winnipeg. Randy Carlyle, I've heard, wants to coach again. He's got a long history with the organization. Scott Arniel, the associate coach in Washington, he played there and has a history with the organization. Travis Green is a guy who has some connections with some people around the organization. And I think it's going to be deeper than that. Pascal Vincent, the associate coach in Columbus, used to coach in the American Hockey League there. Now, I do think the Jets aren't only going to look at people who have a connection. I think they will look at some other new, fresher faces. But one thing I do think about Winnipeg is they do like familiarity, and they do like people who know what it's like to be in Winnipeg and know the connection between the team and the market and the intense spotlight there. And all those individuals I've mentioned would know. I'm sure there's going to be more, but those are some early names I've kind of heard around there.
Of course, it's not just head coaches we're talking about this time of year. A lot of teams are just trying to shuffle things and get better for next season. So the Devils announced yesterday that they've parted ways with assistant coaches Ellen Nasruddin and Mark Recchi. What is the latest on the Devils coaching staff and the overall picture really for the team moving forward?
Well, the one thing also, Tom Fitzgerald had a media conference yesterday, and he did have a lot of interesting things to say. I would encourage all fans who are curious about it to watch it, because I thought it was an interesting media conference. But the one thing that wasn't there was an absolute, even though he praised Lindy Ruff, there wasn't anything there that was an absolute 100% certainty as to when, will Ruff be back next year. And, I think the same thing we're kind of waiting in Vegas. There isn't 100% certainty that Peter DeBoer is going to be back next year. So sometimes I wonder if these teams kind of want to look at the landscape and see what else could possibly be out there, or, just take a bit more time to think about what they're doing. The thing with me for the Devils is, if you listen to their messaging, they believe very strongly that they're headed in the right direction. I think the fact that Jack Hughes came out and spoke very strongly in favor of Lindy Ruff is not an insignificant detail. The fact that Hughes came out so positively for Ruff, I think a lot of people in the organization took notice. I think that's very meaningful. But I do think that the Devils' biggest offseason question is, what's happening in goal? Now, Fitzgerald said they want to get one other NHL-ready goaltender for sure. I still am curious to see about what the future is for Mackenzie Blackwood. There's a point this season where I wouldn't have believed that he would have been back in New Jersey by both sides' choice, the team and his. But Fitzgerald certainly left the door open to that in his meeting yesterday.
A lot to be decided there in Jersey, and a lot of interviews, it sounds like, to come. So I guess they can send them your way if they need a suit jacket or something else, because it looks like you're coming to us from Brooks Brothers or something. I mean, you've got quite the selection there, Elliotte.
Well, the ugly jackets all belong to the ugly jackets are all David Amber's,
Yeah.
and the really nice jackets are all mine.
You would. Really quickly, did you want to get a shout out there too? I know you're trying to get something going with charity and a possible return of the beard or the hair or the signature Elliotte look that we've come to know and love.
Well, I don't know if I would say love, Jamie. That's very nice of you. There are certain people who would strongly disagree. We're talking about it. Are we going to bring the beard back? And my charity has tended to be Blue Review Children's Hospital, but we're talking about that right now, and it is possible the beard is coming back, although don't show this segment to my wife because I haven't told her yet.
Surprise! Yeah, it's okay. I don't think NHL Network's on in Canada anyway, so you're safe. Thanks so much, Elliotte, for the time, and enjoy the night of playoff coverage.